Welcome to Tilly's Trans Tuesdays. So many people love my trans allegory deep dives, and so many people loved a certain huge animated movie, so let's marry the two. Only this might not go the way you think. Here's the imperfect trans allegory of K-pop Demon Hunters, Part 1. Hi, I'm Tilly Bridges, your host, and I'm joined by my writing partner, my best friend, my wife, our token cis representation, a lady who's not remotely imperfect for me, Susan Bridges.
Hello.
Our guest this week is Jeremy Holt, a non-binary author whose works include The Gravestone Sessions, forthcoming from Abrams Fanfare, What If Venom from Marvel, Gatsby from AWA Studios, Made in Korea from Image Comics, Virtually Yours from Dark Horse, and Before Houdini from Insight Comics. They are committed to telling inclusive narratives about diversity, gender identity, and empowered POC characters for adult, young adult, and middle grade readers. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about Made in Korea because even though it's about a robot, or maybe android is a better word, it felt to me like it was a really deeply personal story, and it's just overflowing with these like trans themes and ideas. And like, was that your intent behind it?
Actually, no. Initially, it was just my exploration into my experience as an adoptee.
Okay.
And I had always felt seeing so much AI content, AI protagonists in movies and TV shows and books. I'd always felt that the AI character was an adoption experience, and I'd never seen anyone sort of explore that directly. I think Steven Spielberg's take on Kubrick's screenplay for AI was probably the closest to it, but it really didn't focus on it that directly. So
Yeah.
this was around the time that this is like 2017 when I was sort of grappling with the types of stories I was trying to tell for almost 7 years, which turned out to be these white male savior stories,
Mm,
which I thought was the stories that I needed to write. And I thought it was the stories that editors wanted to read.
right.
And it really wasn't the case. So I decided to look into just the things in my life that made me and infuse them into a narrative. And Virtually Yours and Made in Korea were my first attempts at just writing personal pieces of myself into my fiction. So it was originally just going to be this adoption experience, but then I thought, what is something that makes this character who is perceived to be not human, human? And at the time that I was writing it, this was a few years later, I had been exploring my gender identity and I thought, God, wouldn't that be interesting to have this character understand their gender identity from the perceived perception of this artificial intelligence where people don't think she's real or
Yeah.
human. And I thought that would be a really interesting thing. And I hadn't seen it done in any sort of broader fiction. So I thought, oh yeah, this is kind of perfect. So it sort of happened as I was writing it. And my co-creator, Gigi, was also happening to be exploring their own gender identity. And then in the process of drawing the book, was going through their own transition. And it was sort of this kind of
Oh,
happy
wow.
synergy of just two lived experiences kind of being baked into this story.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love when you sort of discover bits about the story as you go. And, nothing like even when we write our outlines for stories and stuff, it always changes a bit once you get to the actual like scripting and you find a lot of it along the way. And so I love it when bits
Mhm.
of ourselves seep through those things. That's really cool. Although I also wanted to ask you, like, since this book has come out, we've now fallen into this false AI large language model crap that's based on artistic theft and backed by billionaires and destroys the environment. And does that complicate having written a story with an AI protagonist for you? Because like it's made me second guess some stories we wanted to tell, like about robots or something. Because I'm like, now, like that's not really AI, but it's so bad, and so it's just it's tough.
It is tough, and I've experienced it in a different way outside of comics because I felt compelled to adapt it into a TV pilot. And so,
Okay.
with a writing partner who is a very skilled and experienced screenwriter, she and I worked on it. She was the one who we knew each other way back in the day when I worked at Apple, and we've been in touch ever since. And she happens to work for one of these large tech companies. And I was in New York a few years ago for the Tribeca Film Festival. I was invited to be a panel judge member on a series of short animation films. And
Oh,
we
that's
got dinner,
cool.
and she was like, "Hey, I've been thinking about Made in Korea, and I can't stop thinking about it. And I would like to try to write a TV pilot with you." And I said, "Okay." And so we wrote it, and then flash forward to now, it's it can't really go anywhere because of just the consensus in Hollywood and this dread and doom and gloom of AI and
Yeah.
anything dystopian, which Made in Korea is naturally a dystopian story. It's just not the right time. And obviously in Hollywood, it's all about timing.
Yeah, it sure is. But I also feel like there's such a difference between like the kind of, I guess, real sentient AI that appears in like sci-fi stories and what we have now, which is just giant databases that are full of lies. And I just the conflation of the two has made it so hard as somebody who writes in sci-fi, and I've just it vexes me. So,
Yeah, I actually I've been high key obsessed with two movies that came out recently, Backrooms and Obsession. And specifically with the former, it's been interesting to listen to someone like Kane Parsons, who's this young filmmaker who's made this multi-million-dollar movie, and how he denounces AI and generative tools. And then
yeah.
A24 a few days later announces that they're partnering with DeepMind. And it's been
Yeah.
interesting reading into that story and how A24 is trying to be as transparent as possible. And it's like, we want to sit at that table because the table's not going away and we want to work in collaboration. But there's just so much confusion. And I think things are getting together about AI and what it means in storytelling and filmmaking. So it's a pretty nuanced conversation that's unfolding.
Yeah, it's a weird intersection of art and life that is making life complicated for creatives. Okay, so this question I find has a very different answer for a lot of non binary folks. So, do you feel like you had a transition?
Yes and no. I think that it was a transition that took many, many years. I think, and this is a conversation obviously I've had with my family that has not gone particularly well, but it's just a self journey, self discovery that I think I embarked on as early as middle school, where I was
Wow.
questioning myself. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until, I mean, I think for a large portion of my adolescence and early adult years, I wrestled with this idea of, I think I'm gay. I think I'm gay. I think I'm gay. And I get to college and I allow myself to have these experiences with the same gender, and it's like, hmm, it doesn't really feel right to me. I don't know what it is. And so kept putting this thing on the shelf. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I met a non-binary person in probably like 2014, 2015, and understanding the difference between gender identity and sexuality. And it's like, oh, I think I've been exploring this wrong thing. And then once I understood the difference, there was this door that I just walked through, and I was like, oh, this is where I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess the transition was just a very slow burn.
Sure. That was a big difficulty for me too as a kid trying to figure out myself because I would see like a girl and I would be attracted to her, but I would also want to be her, and I didn't know that was a thing that was possible. And so the sexuality and gender got all wrapped up together, and they're completely separate things. And when you don't have that context, especially like as a kid, that there's a difference between the two things. Like you don't know what to explore, and it's all just it's very strange.
That's why we need more stories.
Exactly right. Exactly. Okay, well then for you, in as much of a transition as you feel you had, what's been the best thing about it?
I think it's just it's something that my mom said to me very early on in my life. because I moved a lot as a child. My dad's job had us moving. He is a retired engineer. So the oil industry takes families all over the world. So I got to see a large portion of the world before I was 17, and I feel grateful for. But every time we'd move and every time I'd start a new school, my mom would always say, "This is the time to reinvent yourself. You can be whoever you want to be." And I remind her now that that was such a big thing to say to such an impressionable mind.
Yeah.
And I said, "You sort of pointed me in this direction where I was like, oh, I can be whoever I want to be." And so the fluidity of just being in queer spaces and being non-binary and the fluidity of it is like whatever feels right to you. And I think it goes in part to a larger thing that I try to do for myself, and I don't encourage with my children, and I talk with friends about, you know, it's never too late to reshape yourself. And I like to think of it as
Yeah.
we're all pieces of clay, and we think over time we harden into these fixed forms, but all it takes is a little water to then reshape yourself. And you can never stop doing that. You can do it whenever you want. And sometimes you might stop for a
Yeah.
while and you feel stuck, but just add a little water. And a little water to me is just self-love, being patient with yourself, showing yourself some generosity, some grace.
Yeah. I love that so much. It's so beautiful to just add some water and soften the clay back up and reshape it to however you want it to be. That's one of the best things I've ever heard on this show. Amazing. Okay, well then on the flip side of that, what has been the worst or perhaps most difficult part of transition for you?
I think just accepting that not everybody in my life, in my immediate life, is ready to have these conversations.
Yeah.
It took me a while to learn to hold space for them, to not take it too personally, and to understand that, this is the family I have, not the family I was hoping to have in regards to these conversations. And it's been an ongoing process, and it certainly provided me and fortified sort of my sense of self. And
Sure.
I don't need the validation, because honestly, even with something as basic as pronouns, I think early on when I realized, they them was just a better fit for me, I sort of became hypersensitive to it. And when people would misgender me, it really bothered me. And then I got
Yeah.
to a point where I realized, well, I get it if you don't understand, and I get it that you make a mistake and you might apologize, and that's fine. That's well and good. But I don't need that from the world around me. I know some people do benefit from that external validation, but I know who I am. And if you mess up or if I get misgendered, it's like it doesn't phase me like it did a few years ago, because again, these things are for me. And
Yeah.
if you don't want to honor them, that's fine. That's not really my problem. And if you're trying, that's great. And you're an ally.
Yeah. It was definitely harder for me early on too. I think because we wait so long trying to figure this out and figure out who we are and become who we are. And then to feel like you're not being seen for who you are right early on can be so painful. But then I think, at least, I don't know if this happens for all of us, but it did also happen for me the way it did for you. Like the further on I get, I'm like, I don't care what you think of me. Like, I would love for you to gender me correctly and not be a bigot or to be trying. That's great. But your opinion of me makes no difference because I love who I am and the people that love me love who I am. And that's all that matters to me. So there's a big
Absolutely.
difference between the two. Yeah.
And I think it's been an ongoing journey for me as far as how I present myself to the world. I did simple things like I got a septum piercing. To me, that just felt more. It. I think a lot about the performance aspect of it, where I think
Sure.
getting the septum piercing was very performative initially, but it's become something that I just deeply love about what I see in the mirror. And
Yeah.
so things that started out performative, I've started to let go of. Like I had really, really long hair that I felt I needed to have just to not be viewed as male. And then
Sure.
I've been wrestling with the fact that I really didn't like it so long. And do I need to keep it so long? And I thought,
Yeah.
no, I don't. And if I cut it a little shorter and someone might not say ma'am to me, which I don't mind, I prefer that than sir. It's like that's okay.
Yeah, I had that early on too, similarly, where I felt like I had to be super extra feminine everywhere I went all the time. Even while I was trying to figure myself out and didn't know how femme I wanted to be yet, I felt like I had to do that. And then as I've progressed on again, I'm like, I'm just going to be me and however I feel, and that's fine. And whatever you interpret it, that's your business and not mine. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, before we get into talking about K-pop Demon Hunters, do you want to let folks know where they can find you online after listening?
Sure. I am basically on Instagram, and that's about it. Jeremy Holt Books is my handle. I'm on Blue Sky, sort of. And my website is the same, jeremyholtbooks.com.
Excellent. Go check those out because there's so many good books that you need to read. All right, let me get this out right up front. I love K-pop Demon Hunters a lot. It is joyous and original and kinetic and gorgeously animated with nearly every song a total banger. And it is steeped in Korean culture and has a Korean cast. And anything that gives a spotlight to communities that are marginalized in the US is wonderful and badly needed. When I first watched it, there were parts of me going, oh, my trans allegory radar was pinging all over until a part of me went, oh, and the radar shut off. Is K-pop Demon Hunters a trans allegory? I had to watch it again and again, and I couldn't quite figure it out. I pondered it for days, turning the details over in my head. And obviously, I am doing this write-up, so you'd think I determined that it was, in fact, a trans allegory. But is it a trans allegory? I think yes and no, with some bright spots of kinda. But it's absolutely worth talking about, not just in terms of its possible allegory, but also because of the ways I think it might not be. I love talking about art and media, you may have noticed, since I won't ever shut up about it. And there's a great discussion to be had here. If you've missed all my other allegory write-ups, the transmedia category of essays at
SillyTransTuesdays.com
is full of goodies just waiting for you. This also gets to something that I think it's important for all of us to understand when talking about these kind of things, which I will cover at the end. I think there is a lot for trans people to identify with in this movie, and I absolutely understand why so many of us, myself included, saw ourselves in Rumi's story. I also think the movie's color scheme of blue representing the Hanmoon and pink being the color of demons and the intermingling of the two certainly helped trans people see transness within it. I have said so many times in these trans allegory episodes that everything in a movie is a choice, and that is absolutely true. And trans people are always going to perk up when anything seems to be trans pride flag coded. We've had to look for these subtle nods to us in everything we watch because so often that's literally all there is. See my 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025 Trans Rep and Media reports in episodes 3, 52 to 54, 97 to 99, and 144 to 147 if you are not aware of the state of actual trans representation in movies and television.
Hint, it's not good.
It's not great. And sometimes they're glaringly obvious, like it is in one of the opening shots of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Ad Astra per Aspera, as discussed in episodes 114 to 116. I believe, though, that the use of pink and blue together in K-pop Demon Hunters, while intentional, is not intentionally a nod to trans people or hints at a trans allegory underneath, but I will explain why as we go. I will also explain when we get to the end what I mean by the film being a quote-unquote imperfect trans allegory, but I need to show you everything in the movie is saying first. So, I do believe the allegory within K-pop Demon Hunters, such as it is unintentional. Don't take that as me saying you can't identify with it or that it can't mean a lot to you. I have covered other unintentional trans allegories, like I believe Silo to be. We talked about that back in episodes 36 to 44. In that one specifically, you can see that the allegory doesn't always work on some minor details, but overall, it absolutely does. Before I get further in, Jeremy, I wanted to ask you if you identified with any part of Rumi's story when you first saw this film. Did it feel a little trans to you?
It's really interesting. I did not pick up on really any of the stuff you wrote about, and I did pick up on because I'm Asian and grew up in white spaces, there was also a hiding of myself regarding my Asian identity. So I think that was front and center in my mind. But having watched it, I don't know how many times because of my daughter, I do see a lot of what you described. And even the colors, the mention of the colors, it went right over my head in that regard. So it was really illuminating what you wrote about.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that comes up in so many of the allegory write-ups I do is the metaphoric use of colors that a lot of films do. And I think it's something that a lot of folks aren't necessarily always looking for. And so I think a lot of people do generally miss it. I even do a lot of times, like the first time through on something. It's not until I sit and watch the same movie for 10 hours straight, examining every little detail, that I find these things. So it is perfectly understandable that a lot of folks may not have seen it.
And I think the fact that the characters are so very much heterosexual in my taking in
Yeah.
of the film that I wouldn't even think my brain didn't even allow itself to go within the other queer spaces, I think.
Yeah, they are aggressively hetero. So I am not sure that the character names in this film are in any way linked to its potential trans allegory, but let's take a look and see what we can learn. Rumi could mean literally lapis lazuli, which is a vibrant blue rock, which is maybe something given that the normal Han moon is blue, but it could also mean stop or beautiful. You could combine those into stop being beautiful or don't pretend you're a girl when you're not, but that might be a stretch. Mira could mean sea or ocean, which is another blue connection, but it could also mean peace, and given her personality, that would be delightfully ironic. Zoe means life, which works for how exuberant and energetic she is, but it also traces to Eve, which also, for biblical reasons, can mean to live or to breathe. Eve being the quote unquote first woman in some religions may also play a part, though, as I am not religious in any way, I cannot really parse the meaning of that in relation to the character. Selene, though a minor character, is an important one, and her name either traces from the masculine Caelius, which means heaven, or is short for Marceline, which traces to the masculine Marcellinus, which is derived from Marcellus, which comes from Marcus, which it's believed came from Mars, the Roman god of war, which may also be related to mas in Latin, which means male. So there certainly could be some gender stuff going on there. Genu could come from Gene, which could mean town or marketplace or precious or rare, combined with U, which could mean house or universe or friend or companion. There are also other Korean hanja that the name could be derived from. If you take all of that together, though, he's about a gathering of friendly people or a place where friendly people are, and how rare and important that is. In other words, community. This actually works remarkably well given what he comes to represent to Rumi. Guima translates from Korean to mean evil spirit, which is quite literal, but it is the spirit of evil that society works into us, also known as internalized transphobia, as discussed in episode 18, or bigotries and evils of other flavors like implicit queerphobia, as discussed in episode 57. He's portrayed as fire, which is one of the most destructive forces in the world, but it can also be life-giving, or in this allegorical sense, is fueling the hate of bigotry. All right, let's get into the timestamps. During the opening scene, note that everyone loves Huntrix. But also remember, as you have seen this film before, that everyone who loves Huntrix also believes they're all human. 1 minute, 3 seconds. Celine narrating. Demons have always haunted our world, stealing our souls and channeling strength back to their king Guima. Until heroes rose to defend us, born with voices that could drive back the darkness, singing songs of courage and hope, but hunters are more than warriors. Our music ignites the soul and brings people together. With this connection, the first hunters created a shield to protect our world, the Hanmoon. Every generation, a new trio of hunters is chosen to fulfill our ultimate duty, a barrier so strong it is impenetrable that will keep demons and Guima from our world forever, the golden Hanmoon. And now that duty falls to you, that victory is within your reach. It is your voices, your song, that will create the golden Hanmoon. It's important to note that the Hanmoon is created with the power from the souls of people saved or protected. Souls and the Hanmoon are blue, showing their connection. And through the montage of all the past hunters, there are trans colors everywhere, especially on the group of hunters that Rumi's mother was part of. From this, you might think that trans people, or at least one trans member of each trio of hunters, was vital to stopping the demons. That kind of works with where the allegory is going, but also maybe not in the way you think. Keep listening. 3 minutes. Rumi is quote-unquote pop star royalty. Her mom was also a demon hunter as part of the Sunlight Sisters, and Celine raised her and built Huntrix around her. In here, though, note that everybody loves Mira and Zoe for who they are, but loves Rumi because of who her mom was, and seemingly secondarily her voice. While appreciating her art is nice, none of these fans appreciate her for who she is, unlike with her fellow hunters. They only appreciate her because of her art or because of who she is related to. There's hints of a trans connection there, right? For trans creatives. Oh, hi, that's me. People might love our art or love the quote unquote family we come from or the people we work for, but that love may not extend to us personally if they know we are trans. 5 minutes. Rumi to the flight attendant. You're a demon, right? You're smiling all weird, watering plants with coffee. And those guys? She gestures to another flight attendant and the pilot, both of whom do not know what they're doing. It is very important to note here that demons are shapeshifters. They can change their form. What do you think that means, especially having already seen the film? 5 minutes, 11 seconds. Rumi. Oh, look, patterns. Demons have jagged lines on their skin that kind of look like tattoos, but they're not anything they intentionally added to their bodies. There are physical features that make them different from quote unquote normal humans that they have no control over. They have a lack of bodily autonomy. Listen to episode 55 of this podcast for more on that. Do you see the link already being made? In this film's allegory, demons are the metaphor for trans people. This will get confirmed a few more times. When asked what superpower we'd most like to have, a large portion of trans people will answer shape-shifting. The reason could be obvious, as it would help us escape gender dysphoria, which we talked about in episode 59. But we also have to deal with societal gaslighting about our very existence, which is episode 95 of this show. And the general public in K-pop Demon Hunters kind of ties into that. Growing up as a kid through a gendered childhood, which was discussed in episode 50, I had no idea trans people existed or was a thing some people could be. This is by design. Listen to episode 79, Trans History 1, How and Why We Name Trans People in History, for more on the intentional erasure of trans people from history. It's why Republicans in the US and right-wing politicians worldwide are working so hard to try to force us back in the closet. If trans people don't know trans is a thing we can be, how can we come out as trans and then be a threat to the entire system of white supremacist patriarchal lies that our society is founded on?
Actually, I just want to take a minute
Yes.
because I love, Jeremy, that you started writing cis white protagonists because that's like all you see.
Yeah.
That's television, right?
You think that's what it has to be?
Yes.
Yeah.
And now we have what? A bunch of cis white male shows with like 90-year-old actors because no one can conceive of anything else and they're still more.
And I think that the influx of Korean culture onto the mainstream, especially in Western societies, and how BTS is so huge, and now Bong Joon-ho's films are widely accepted, and now K-pop Demon Hunters, for someone who has biracial children who are very Asian passing, they won't have to do the mental and emotional gymnastics I had to do as a kid to find characters and stories where I was like, well, I'm close enough to this character, even though I look nothing like them.
Yeah, that's why representation matters so much. There's and like you said, having to sort of be like, I'm close enough to this character. Like, I got that a lot through Jadzia Dax and Star Trek Deep Space Nine, who's not canonically trans, but as a kid who was trans and didn't understand what trans was or that it was a thing I could be, I connected with her in this really important way that I didn't understand. And that's great. And I adore the character for that reason. But also, we should have actual representation, stories we can all see ourselves in and say, like, we can be part of this world too. And that's why it's so important to me, the inclusion that we include in all of our work, in everything that we do, because everybody deserves to see themselves in our stories. And I'm so sick of it being all cishet white man centered all the time,
I mean, we fight it constantly.
Constantly.
Do you find that, Jeremy, like that when you're
Yeah.
trying to get projects approved, like it's just...
It's that, and I think comics obviously is very different than film and TV.
Yeah.
But there's a very small bandwidth for, at least in film and TV, it seems to be for original content. And, when I wrote the pilot for Made in Korea, I had a lot of meetings with executives and was very encouraging. But the consensus was that nobody wanted to program a show featuring a child protagonist because Stranger Things is a one-off. And I would say, well, these aren't really the same thing. They're completely different genres, first of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, you're focusing on this dystopian AI, which I understand, but no one seemed to grasp or accept that this is first and foremost an adoption story. And that's what I would tell my agent. We need to reframe this as an adoption story. Yes, it has it happens to have an android protagonist, but it's about family and adoption within a sci-fi space and not the other way around.
Right, right. It also that is wild to me that they're like, well, Stranger Things is a one-off, and that feels like very Hollywood to be like, well, we only need one thing that is slightly different. But how many shows star cis het white men, right? There's way more than one. So why do they get more and we don't? You know,
And the
even
remakes and the reboots, it's just like
yeah,
you can only have one, but you're also making the same thing over and over again. Like, which
over and
is it?
over. Yeah, exactly. It's infuriating.
We could talk about that all day.
What's interesting too about the shape shifting is that I think if trans people were given this magic button where it's like if you could have, the ability to shapeshift, would you? And I think I'm glad that in theory it's a nice thought, but practically speaking, I think what's beautiful about the trans experience for everybody is who identifies as such is to go at it at a human pace, not this
Yeah.
magical pace. And I think that the idea of sitting with the discomfort of, I think initially everybody wants to be passing in some form, but then to just live with it again at this human pace and go, I don't have to conform to the binary, which is what we are
Right.
constantly trying to extricate ourselves from. So whenever I see content creators, especially trans creators who, trans women who talk a lot about their voice, and I think it's so interesting about some creators I follow lean into the deeper voice and they love their voice. And it's just,
Yeah.
I think if they had that magical button, they'd go immediately, oh, 100% femme, so no one knows. And it's like, well, that's not really the point, I think.
Yeah, no, it is the same for me. Like, I don't want to be cis. I don't want to be read as. I love being seen as a trans woman because I love being trans. It's so important to me. It's a vital part of who I am. I think it's beautiful. But I think also for a lot of those people, I wonder how many of them are getting a lack of oppression by society confused with wanting to be cis. Like, maybe what you
Mm.
want is to just be treated like cis people are treated, but you don't necessarily want to be seen as cis, because we face so much oppression in that way, so that you feel that pressure to conform.
Yeah, the societal pressure is so strong. It's
Yeah,
hard to untangle that too. because
exactly.
Everyone is being
Totally.
forced into little boxes all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very annoying.
It sure is. Well, if the metaphor in this movie for trans people is demons, and it has to be to make the allegory work as much as it does, the metaphor for cis people are humans. And right there, you can maybe see some of where this is going. Trans people being monsters and cis people being normal humans is a pretty othering setup in a movie that is, as far as I know, entirely written and directed by cis people.
It also kind of plays into the trans people can't be trusted.
Right,
You can't really know if they're trans. They're trying to fool you.
Tricksters.
Trickster.
Yeah.
The trickster thing.
Yeah. 5 minutes, 20 seconds. The demons reveal their true forms as fanged monsters. Mira. Oh, you got the patterns. Now you gotta die. The demons threaten to eat Huntrix's fans, and then a fight ensues, and the demons are killed by Rumi, Mira, and Zoe. Despite Mira saying the demons have to die, the movie doesn't show them actually dying. They're just sent back to the underworld. If this is allegory, this isn't really death. So what is it? This scene is showing you that society has trained these three who are aware of trans people that the response to us should be violence. This includes legislative violence. This includes gaslighting us about our existence. This includes not believing we are who we say we are, and so much more than actual physical violence, which is also a very real problem. Listen to episode 160 on the constant fight of existing while trans for more. I do want to stress, at this point, the film's allegory isn't saying this is how it should be, but this is how it is now. Rumi, a trans person, has been trained to visit all of this violence upon trans people. This is the implicit transphobia society works into every single cis person. Again, check out episode 57 on implicit queerphobia and episode 18 on the internalized transphobia that society works into every trans person. In the lead up to the concert, the colors get super transy again, and during their performance, we see the non-golden Han moon spreading to protect the world and demons trapped underneath it. By upholding the implicit transphobia of society, they are keeping trans people trapped away from society and away from cis people. In the closet. That is what the underworld is. Trans people trapped and isolated from the rest of the world. 9 minutes, 10 seconds. In the underworld, the flight attendant demon that failed to stop Huntrix is confronted by Guima. She's destroyed for it, and this appears to be an actual death in the surface level story, as Guima berates all the other demons for being useless. Note that Guima, king of the demons, is also blue and pink, tying into my read of him as societal hate, bigotry, and transphobia. 10 minutes, 29 seconds. Genu has a plan for he and some fellow demons to impersonate humans and try to steal Huntrix's fans to rob the Han Moon of its power. 11 minutes, 11 seconds. Guima. I know you, Genu. In 400 years, you've never done a single thing that didn't serve yourself. Genu is selfish, or at least believes himself to be. And now Guima is feeding into that. Society wants us to feel that way. So much of society will tell trans people that we are selfish for wanting to live authentic lives free of pain due to the cis people around us not being able to handle it. And it is those very cis people who are being selfish and asking us to live a painful waking nightmare for their own comfort. See the essay on cis grief at
SillyTransTuesdays.com.
and listen to episode 71 on cis spousal support for more on that. 11 minutes 40 seconds. Huntrix saw some gold in the Han Moon, which means it's time to release the song that will truly turn it gold. Rumi coughs. She knows, inside, that stealing the Han Moon means she'd be trapping everyone else like her, everyone trans, in the closet forever. Even if only subconsciously here, she knows it's not right and her body reacts. 13 minutes 31 seconds. Rumi immediately launches the new single and puts on her new outfit. She has to wear a costume. Like, there are a lot of costume changes in this film, but the one for Golden is special. It is the costume of the cis person she has to wear to pretend that she too isn't trans, especially if she's going to lock that closet door on every other trans person, like she's expected to. Golden plays for the first time, and it is the first hint we get that Rumi is living some kind of double life or has a secret she doesn't want to get out, both of which are just super trans. Let's look at some of the lyrics. I was a ghost, I was alone, in the darkened path ahead. Given the throne, I didn't know how to believe I was the queen that I meant to be. This song is about trying to deny who she really is and live up to who she's been told she is and is meant to be. And if you take the queen part of that literally in terms of gender, that would make Rumi non-binary or transmasc, and she's trying to live up to the false expectations that have been put upon her that she is a woman. I lived 2 lives, tried to play both sides, but I couldn't find my own place. Called a problem child because I got too wild, but now that's how I'm getting paid. Eternally on stage. I'm done hiding, now I'm shining like I'm born to be. We're dreaming hard, we came so far, now I believe. Oh, our time, no fear, no lies, that's who we're born to be. Waited so long to break these walls down, to wake up and feel like me. Rumi's not the one who sings all of the above lines, but it still sounds a lot like a trans person about to come out, right? Done living the lie. But then it takes a turn. Put these patterns all in the past now and finally live like the girl they all see. No more hiding, I'll be shining like I'm born to be. Putting those patterns in the past and live like the girl they all see show you that now it's about locking her own true self away in the closet forever. This will also get confirmed later on. Rumi believes that locking that closet door will free her from her transness, but that is not the way it works. So many of us try to ignore it, even though the signs were always there, and yes, there is a discussion on that way back in episode 6. We pretend it's not there, or deny it, or try to bury it, but it doesn't go away. You literally cannot change the truth of who you really are, no matter what you do. And I want to say now, like, this song gets a lot of radio play, which is really cool for a song from an animated film. But also, like, it's such a banger, and yet knowing that it's about trying to deny your true self just, like, depresses me. I, like, can't fully enjoy the song anymore. I'm like, she's trying to hide who she really is, and that's bad. Oh, it's very complicated feelings in me.
Well, it gets totally covered up with the catchy beat, I think.
Yeah.
It makes me think of this Kylie Minogue song, Hand on Your Heart, which I'd known that song for a long time, and it's such a dance number. And then I heard Jose Gonzalez cover it as almost it was an acoustic version. And to hear the lyrics stripped away from all the dance beat, it is one of the saddest songs I've ever heard. And I was like, oh my God, everyone is dancing to
Yeah.
the most emo song ever. And you don't know until you have it stripped away.
Yeah. That's like when I looked up the lyrics and I was transcribing them from watching the film with the captions and everything. I was just like, I love this song. And I was like, yeah, it's so empowering. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not at all. It's so sad. 15 minutes, 5 seconds. Mira about Golden. It is the story of us. Rumi, it's a song about who we are and where we're going next. This confirms that for Rumi, Golden is about putting her transness behind her forever. Ha, good luck. The story of them is upholding transphobia as we are all implicitly taught and as they were explicitly taught to do. How many of us have been conditioned or even explicitly taught to mock a man who does anything feminine like wear a dress, or to mock a woman who doesn't shave her legs, and on and on. Huntrix believes that where they've been, who they are, and where they are going is more of the same, oppressing trans people. It is what they have literally been trained to do. And we will wrap it there for this week. Thanks for being here, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me.
Come back next time as Rumi learns that pretending you're not trans doesn't make it go away, and we'll see how her first encounter with the trans community affects her. Tilly Bridges, end transmission. Tilly's Trans Tuesdays is hosted by Tilly Bridges and Susan Bridges, with audio editing and sound mixing by Jillian Morgan. The written essay version of this week's topic and all past topics is available at tillystranstuesdays.com. Special thanks to Daisy and Jane for the use of Sorry Not Sorry as our show's theme music. Please stop by and show your support at daisyandjane.bandcamp.com and soundcloud.com/daisyandjane. You can find me at Tilly Bridges on Blue Sky, on Mastodon at Tilly Bridges and Mastodon.social, and on Insta at Heck Yeah Tilly Bridges. And you can find Susan on those at Susan L. Bridges. You can find Jillian at Audio Jillian on Blue Sky. You can join the Tillyverse Discord server by following the link at the very bottom of tillystranstuesdays.com. We hold regular watch parties for the Matrix films and other trans movies, where I do a live Q&A, and it's blossomed into a wonderfully supportive, compassionate, kind community of friends. We love to have you join us. If you'd like to keep up with all the writing that Susan and I do, you can sign up for our newsletter at birdguestbroadcast.com. Signed copies of our comics and my book, Begin Transmission, The Trans Allegories of the Matrix, are available on my coffee shop at ko-fi.com/tillybridges. If you're listening on YouTube, it's so cliche, but please like and subscribe and take a few seconds to leave a comment. Those feed the algorithm and helps the show be found by so many more people. If you're listening on other platforms, ratings and reviews help just as much, and I'd certainly appreciate them. Thank you for your support. For more information, visit pendantaudio.com. Thanks for listening. This will get confirmed a few more times.
Confirmed.
What did I say?
I don't know. It was weird.